Ronnie Jacobson had always been different from childhood. He seemed older than his years. While other boys were roughhousing in the backyard or glued to video games, Ronnie was watching his parents, guests with curious, calculated eyes. He wasn't the type to speak much, but when he did, his words had weight. Even his teachers noticed it. An unsettling sense of calm and control in a teenager. But what no one knew was that by the time Ronnie turned 18, his mind had wandered far past the curiosity of a typical teenage boy. He wasn't interested in experimenting with girls his age. He didn't care for their social dramas or juvenile flirtations. He saw them as immature, predictable and emotionally chaotic. What excited him was control, power, the thrill of seduction. Not with equals, but with women who were supposed to know better. Older women, especially those in positions of authority, fascinated him. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was psychological. They were smarter, more experienced, more composed. They presented a challenge. And in his mind, conquering them, making them break their rules and fall for him, was the ultimate validation. His college campus was the perfect hunting ground. The first woman to fall into his web was Tina Hawkins, his literature professor. She was in her mid-30s, soft-spoken, always dressed in elegant earth tones, and she carried a sadness in her eyes that Ronnie immediately fixated on. Her wedding ring remained on her finger, but she rarely mentioned her husband. That alone told Ronnie enough. There was a gap, an emotional void. He started small compliments during office hours, introspective essays about love and loss designed to catch her attention. Then eye contact that lingered just a little too long. Tina resisted at first, but Ronnie's maturity disarmed her. He wasn't just a student, he listened. He noticed when she was having a rough day. He remembered details about her lectures, made her feel respected, admired, and eventually understood. The first kiss happened on a rainy evening inside her car. She had offered him a ride after class. He didn't make a move. He waited. He let her initiate it, a moment of emotional vulnerability where her loneliness bled through her restraint. The kiss turned into more, and soon they were meeting secretly in off-campus hotels, places where Tina wouldn't be recognized. Ronnie's plan. It worked perfectly, but it didn't stop there. His next target was Alyssa Grant, a fiery, intelligent woman in her early 40s who taught psychology. She was different from Tina's, outspoken, emotionally intuitive, the kind of woman who could read anyone like a book. Except she couldn't read Ronnie. That intrigued her. Ronnie knew exactly how to worm his way in. He asked deep, probing questions in class, stayed behind to discuss behavioral theories. He told her, falsely, that his mother had suffered from bipolar disorder and how studying psychology helped him understand her. Alyssa's empathetic side kicked in immediately. She started to see Ronnie not as a student, but as a young man who was intelligent, composed, and emotionally aware. When their relationship turned physical, she convinced herself it was an exception, a connection too rare to ignore. In truth, Ronnie had baited her perfectly, but the more women he seduced, the more twisted. His game became with Anna Morales, the stoic, no-nonsense mathematics instructor. The chase was longer. Anna had built walls around her heart, focused entirely on her career. Most students found her cold, robotic even. But Ronnie saw past it. He noticed the subtle cracks, the way she held her arm a bit too tightly when talking about failure, or how she hesitated when asked about her personal life. He used those openings masterfully. He faked vulnerability, told her about sleepless nights and feelings of emptiness. He sent her late-night emails about philosophical questions, pretending to be lost, looking for meaning. Slowly, Anna let him in. Their first encounter was in her campus. Office after hours, the blinds drawn, she cried. Afterward, Ronnie held her, whispering it was okay, but inside he felt only satisfaction. Then came Stephanie Lane, the most impulsive of the four, the gym instructor with a dazzling smile and an addictive laugh. Stephanie was in her late 38s. Never married and always seemed to be chasing something. Adventure, distraction, escape. Ronnie played into that like a pro. He caught her during a moment of loneliness. They started talking after she offered him tips on posture and diet during a personal training elective. He flirted without being crass. He let her feel in control. When she finally took him home after a campus event, she thought it was spontaneous. Ronnie knew it was inevitable. The difference with Stephanie, though, was how quickly things escalated. Their encounters were wild, often reckless. She was the first one he recorded secretly. It was risky, dangerous, but that danger excited. The footage was raw, chaotic, and became one of his most viewed trophies. Ronnie's mind, they were all just pieces in a perverse collection. Objects, not people. He began storing hundreds of videos on his phone, organized in folders, catalogued by name and date. Some had audio commentary, he whispered afterward. These weren't for blackmail. They were for his pleasure, his archive, his private theater of power. He watched them late at night with headphones on, smiling to himself, reliving the seductions. The power, the fall. But Ronnie's greatest weakness, his uncontrolled lust, blinded him to the consequences. He didn't realize his phone, the very vault of his secrets, would eventually betray him. It only took one careless moment, one misplaced device, one father's. And the entire house of cards would come crashing down into a pool of blood. The house was unusually quiet that evening. Sierra had taken a short trip to her sister's house 2 cities away, something she did every couple of months. She liked checking in on her nieces and escaping the noise of the household. For a while, it was just Jacob and Ronnie that weekend, a father and son, each in their own world. Jacob had always been a grounded man, a carpenter by trade. He spent most of his days crafting furniture in the garage, sanding down slabs of wood with quiet precision. That night, he was planning to fix the leaky kitchen faucet. Nothing major, just a slow drip. That had been annoying him for weeks, but when he reached under the sink, he realized his wrench set was missing. He muttered under his breath and walked down the hallway toward Ronnie's room. It was just a small thing borrowing a tool, but that small thing would become the hinge on which an entire nightmare would swing open. Jacob gently pushed Ronnie's. "We're open, expecting clutter, maybe close on the floor or open textbooks." What he didn't expect was the eerie cleanliness. The bed was made, the desk was meticulously organized, a MacBook sat closed on one side, and near the edge of the nightstand was Ronnie's phone, buzzing silently with some kind of notification. Jacob reached for the top drawer, but knocked the phone in the process. It clattered to the wooden floor, screen lighting up as it landed face up. The alert caught his attention. Private Vault's new backup complete. 22 files. Jacob stared at it for a moment. He wasn't tech-savvy, but the name of the app? Private Vault felt suspicious. A backup of 22 files. His gut twisted slightly. He picked up the phone, turned to leave, but paused. The man in him said, "Respect your son's privacy," the father and him said. "Just make sure he's not in trouble." That second voice won. Jacob opened the phone. It was unlocked. He tapped on the Private Vault icon. A numeric passcode screen popped up. Instinctively, he typed Ronnie's birthday's success. The vault opened. There, staring back at him, was a screen filled with thumbnail previews, videos, all blurred just enough to suggest their content without being. Implicit, each file had names Tina Hotel 3 MP4 Elisa Office 1.move and a floorcam MP4 Stephanie Fitness Night Davy. Jacob blinked. His hand trembled as he tapped one of them. Tina H3. The screen filled with motion. It wasn't vague or suggestive. It was explicit. Jacob's breath left his body. His ears rang. He froze, horrified, unable to tear his eyes away from the images of his son. His son. Engage in unspeakable acts with a woman he recognized instantly. Tina. Professor Hawkins. She had come over for dinner once, sat right at this table, complimented his craftsmanship on the wooden chairs. Jacob tapped another file. Elissa, then Anna, then Stephanie. Each video felt like a dagger into his chest. He could barely breathe. He dropped the phone onto the bed and staggered back, his world spiraling into something unfamiliar. It wasn't just the acts. It was the cold, deliberate organization of them. The fact that Ronnie had catalogued these encounters like trophies, the coldness of it, the darkness. He stood frozen in Ronnie's room, heart pounding, feeling as if someone had just dropped him into a pit of snakes. Ronnie returned an hour later, humming to himself, tossing his backpack onto the kitchen stool. He grabbed a soda, noticed the silence, and frowned.
Dad.
Jacob was standing in the living room, phone in hand. The moment Ronnie stepped in and saw the look in his father's eyes, his heart sank. Jacob didn't speak. He simply tapped the screen and let the next video play. The sound filled the room. Muffled moans, whispered names, the sound of a mattress shifting beneath bodies. Ronnie stood, paralyzed. He recognized the file immediately. It was one he watched often. Stephanie on the gym floor, recorded secretly with a cam he had hidden in his sports bag, explained this. Jacob said, his voice unervingly calm. Ronnie's lips parted, but no sound came out. I said explain it. Jacob repeated, his grip tightening around the phone. Ronnie blinked. Then, foolishly, he laughed a dry, nervous chuckle. Dad, it's not what it looks like. Jacob threw the phone at the couch. Don't insult my intelligence. He barked. That laugh was a mistake. Ronnie tried again. They're all adults. It's not illegal. It's all consensual. You're sleeping with your teachers. 7 of them. Jacob interrupted, his voice rising, cracking at the edge. I mean, yeah, it's not like a kid. Ronnie shrugged. It just happened. Happened. Jacob's voice boomed. You planned this? You filmed it? I saw folders. You named them like files in a computer lab. Okay, yeah, Ronnie snapped back, suddenly defensive. So what? It's my life. My business. Jacob's jaw clenched. Your business. You filmed these women without their consent. They didn't say not to. You manipulated them, Jacob hissed. You turned your teachers into playthings like their. I didn't force them, Dad. They all fell for me. I just gave them what they wanted, those words. I just gave them what they wanted, broke Jacob. A silence followed, so heavy it crushed the air between them. Jacob took a step forward. Is this who you are? He said, tears forming in his eyes. This is who I raised. Ronnie softened a bit, realizing the gravity. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. It just felt powerful, like I finally mattered. Powerful. Jacob repeated, barely a whisper. You feel powerful now. He turned away, hands shaking. Then, suddenly, he snapped. With one swift motion, he grabbed the heavy bronze statue on the shelf, a gift from Sierra on their anniversary. It was abstract. Shaped like a twisted flame, solid, cold, he turned and struck Ronnie across the side of the head. Ronnie collapsed instantly, but Jacob wasn't done. The second blow landed on his shoulder, the third across his jaw. Ronnie raised a hand to stop him, but Jacob was lost, blinded by betrayal. Heartbreak, disgust, and guilt. He couldn't hear anymore, couldn't think. Each swing was a scream that never left his throat. Blood splattered the wall, the floor, the coffee table. By the time the rage faded, Jacob was standing alone in a room painted with horror. Ronnie lay twisted and still on the living room floor. One hand outstretched like he was trying to crawl, the other cradling his bleeding head. Jacob dropped the statue with a dull thud. His breath was ragged, his legs buckled beneath him. He collapsed to his knees, sobbing, his screams raw, primal, echoing through the house. His son was dead, and he had killed him. The silence after Ronnie's last breath was unbearable. Jacob knelt on the blood-soaked floor, gasping. He didn't remember dropping the statue. He didn't remember the moment Ronnie stopped moving. All he could feel was the air suddenly growing heavier around him. His son's body, limp and lifeless, was sprawled in a way that no sleeping person would mimic. His eyes were open. Jacob stared into them, searching for something. Blame, remorse, even hatred. But there was nothing left. Just a hollow, haunting stillness. The realization crushed him like a landslide. He had just murdered his only child. Not out of defense. Not out of fear, but out of something far more uncontrollable. Emotion. He hadn't been thinking. He had been drowning in rage and betrayal, in heartbreak. He screamed, loud and raw. Then everything went quiet again, for minutes, maybe hours. He didn't know. Jacob sat motionless, staring at the blood that had soaked into the fibers of their beige carpet, the very carpet Sierra had picked out herself on their anniversary trip to Delhi. The irony wasn't lost on him, that memory now painted with blood. Jacob wiped his face with trembling hands, smearing both sweat and blood. Across his cheeks, his breath hitched again. What have I done? But beneath that grief, something else began to rise. A whisper, dark and compelling. They did this too, the women, the teachers, the ones who had betrayed their position, who had crossed boundaries, who had corrupted his son, or at least failed to protect him from himself. He looked over at Ronnie again, his jaw clenched. You weren't innocent. But they were supposed to know better. He stood up, unsteady, pale. His legs barely held him, but adrenaline was beginning to take over. The pain in his chest turned into a sharp purpose, a dangerous clarity. He walked to the kitchen sink, turned on the tap, and began washing the blood off his arms. The red-tinted water spiraled into the drain. Like a hypnotic dance, he cleaned his face, his forearms, under his nails. The water didn't make him feel cleaner, but the ritual gave him time to think. One by one, he remembered their faces. Tina. The gentle one. She sat across from him at dinner, smiling as Sierra served her soup. How could she pretend to be so innocent when she was sneaking around with his son behind their backs? Elisa. Smug. Confident. The one who always talked like she knew everything about people's minds. Where was your insight when you crawled into bed with a boy you were supposed to guide? Anna. Emotionless, cold, too smart to be naive. She had to know. She had to be aware. Stephanie, the young, wild one, the one who laughed too loud, flirted too openly, the one who probably made the first move. Jacob's anger boiled again. Not blind rage this time, but a cold, vengeful calculation. They had to answer for this. He walked into the bedroom and opened the small locked cabinet. In his closet. He hadn't used the gun in years, not since a robbery attempt at his workshop that left him paranoid. But the pistol was still there, clean and loaded. 1 magazine, 8 bullets, 4 names. He stuffed the gun into a satchel along with Ronnie's phone. He needed the evidence. He'd show them. He'd show them the videos, confront them one by one, force them to look into his eyes and acknowledge what they had done. Then he would pull the trigger. He scribbled a note and left it on the kitchen counter. He didn't read it back. He didn't care, his fingers were trembling, but his mind was focused. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. Then something. He stepped into the hallway and noticed it. A flash, red and blue, reflected through the frosted glass of the main door sirens. He stopped dead in his tracks. His heart sank. They were coming here. Jacob slowly opened the door and peeked through 4 patrol cars, officers stepping out quickly, guns drawn. His body stiffened. How the hell? And then he saw her. Mrs. D'Souza, the elderly widow who lived next door. She stood on her front steps, her hands shaking, talking frantically to one of the officers. Jacob didn't need to hear her words. He knew the blood, the screams, the statue hitting the floor. Maybe even the moment he howled in grief, she must have seen or heard something. She must have looked under the gate, seen the crimson trail sliding toward the street like a grotesque invitation. Number, not now, not yet, I haven't finished this. He turned to run just to the car. He could still make it, still make them pay. Stop, drop the bag, a voice shouted behind him. He froze. Another officer came around the side of the house, weapon raised, hands in the air. Jacob's vision blurred. Another scream from Sierra. She had just arrived, her suitcase still in hand, eyes wide with horror. She had driven past the sirens and sprinted the last few feet to the gate. Confused and breathless, she stood frozen as she saw her husband, her Jacob, surrounded by cops, holding a blood-streaked satchel. Then she saw past them through the open door into the living room, and her legs gave out. She dropped to her knees in the dirt, screaming as if her soul had been set on fire. Ronnie, No, 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 please no. Jacob didn't fight. His strength drained instantly. The gun slipped from his grip. Officers tackled him, shoved him to the ground, knee on his back, hands cuffed tight. He didn't resist. His face was buried in the dirt as his wife's cries broke the night. Tears streamed from his eyes, not because he was caught, but because in that single moment, everything he loved had died. His son, his family, his life. Everything's gone. The courtroom was overflowing. People who had never stepped inside a court before now waited in lines outside just to catch a glimpse of the man at the center of one of the most disturbing family tragedies the state had ever seen. Jacob Jacobson, the father who murdered his own son after discovering a string of secret affairs with 7 of his college teachers. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but it didn't matter. Every news outlet had already plastered the story everywhere. Father kills son over forbidden affairs. The headlines were bait. The kind that sparked debates over morality, power, consent, corruption, and mental illness. Sierra sat on the bench closest to the aisle, wearing a black shawl. Her face was drained of all color, the red in her eyes permanent. She hadn't spoken publicly since the arrest. Not to press, not to family. Her voice, done so full of warmth, had vanished with Roni. She hadn't stepped foot back into that house. Jacob entered the courtroom in handcuffs, thinner than anyone remembered. His beard was unkempt. His eyes were distant, almost grayed out, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. He looked like a man still wandering inside a dream he couldn't wake from. The trial began with a gut-wrenching timeline the prosecutor opened by showing the video files. Jacob had found clips the jury had to watch in silence. One juror reportedly vomited during recess. The files were explicit, raw, and disturbing not just for their content, but for what they revealed, a young man addicted to seduction, power, and secrecy. And then came the murder. Photos of the crime scene were shown. The blood-soaked rug, the shattered bronze statue. Ronnie's lifeless body crumpled in the middle of the room, eyes still open. It wasn't just brutal, it was personal. The blows weren't random, they were fueled by a storm of betrayal and heartbreak. The prosecution didn't have to work hard. The evidence was overwhelming. Jacob had confessed the moment he was restrained. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't plead self-defense. He simply muttered, "I killed him. I couldn't stop." But then came the defense, and everything became more complex. Jacob's lawyer didn't try to prove innocence. Instead, he painted a vivid picture of a man whose entire world crumbled in a single moment. He detailed how Jacob was a loving father, respected neighbors' loyal husband until the night he discovered the videos. The defense argued in temporary insanity brought on by psychological trauma, too devastating to rationally bear. Then Jacob took the stand, and the courtroom turned to stone. He didn't cry, he didn't yell. He just talked calmly, like someone who had nothing left to lose. He explained how it started, Sierra being out for the weekend, the leaky faucet, the accidental block of the phone, the video that broke him. He explained how he felt sick, like 1,000 worms crawling through his veins. Then he described the confrontation, how Ronnie laughed at first, then admitted everything. How his son bragged, how he used the word powerful, how Jacob snapped. "I wasn't thinking." He told the court I wasn't even there. I saw his face, but it wasn't my son anymore. It was every betrayal I'd ever known wrapped into one. I lost him before I ever raised that statue. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge didn't interrupt him. Then Jacob turned to face Sierra. "I took him from you," he whispered. "And I can never ask you to forgive me, but I swear to God I loved him, and that's what destroyed me. I loved him too much to imagine he could do something like that. When I saw those videos, I didn't see my son. I saw a stranger wearing his face." Sierra didn't respond. She just stared at him, tears falling down. Her face unreadable. The verdict came quickly. Jacob was found guilty of second-degree murder with no recommendation for parole. He was sentenced to life in prison. But what unfolded outside the courtroom was another storm entirely. Within days of the videos becoming public record the lives of the women involved were annihilated. Tina Hawkins, where Watson was fired immediately from the college. Her husband of 12 years filed for divorce within 48 hours. She left town soon after the verdict, her name permanently associated with headlines like "Teacher Seduced by Teens." She gave one interview to a local station and simply said, "I didn't know how lonely I was until someone paid attention." Alyssa Grant, the psychology professor, faced relentless scrutiny. Protesters gathered outside her campus office, demanding accountability. She was placed on administrative leave, then quietly resigned. Rumors swirled that she had checked into a private mental health facility. Her once promising career was reduced to a ghost. Anna Morales didn't even wait for her hearing, she vanished. Her apartment was found half-packed, her car missing. The school never released a statement. Some said she fled the country. Others claimed she never taught for real love, only control. Stephanie Lane, the gym instructor, suffered perhaps the most public downfall. Her explicit video with Ronnie was the most widely shared, a cruel digital weapon that ruined her name overnight. She tried denying it. Then she tried apologizing. Eventually, she attempted suicide and was hospitalized for weeks. Her recovery became a silent struggle behind closed doors, far from the public eye. The three other teachers, who appeared briefly in the videos, resigned without contest. They were never formally named by the media, but whispers in the community made anonymity impossible. Their reputations were unsalvageable. The college was flooded with lawsuits. Parents, former students, watchdog organizations all demanded answers. How could so many faculty members be involved with a single student and no one noticed? An internal investigation uncovered a staggering lack of boundaries, oversight, and administrative vigilance. Board members resigned. A new code of ethics was implemented. Mandatory surveillance was installed. The school tried to rebuild, but enrollment dropped significantly. The neighborhood that once admired the Jacobsons now spoke in hushed tones. Their house was sold 6 months after the trial. No one wanted to live there. No one wanted to remember. Sierra retreated into herself after the trial. She never returned to her old job. She stopped taking calls. Stopped answering the door. Her days were consumed by silence. She would sit in her new apartment for hours, staring at the last photograph of Rooney, his high school graduation portrait, smiling, clean, untouched by the darkness that followed. At night, she replayed both of their voices in her head. Jacob's booming laughter. Ronnie's soft, "I love you," Mom whispered before bed. She spoke to no one, but she wrote dozens of journals, page after page. Grief, rage, regret. Letters to Ronnie, letters to Jacob, letters to herself. One page read, "I lost my son the day I realized I didn't know who he was. I lost my husband the day he realized it too. And I lost myself in the silence between them." She never remarried, never moved again. Some say she visits the cemetery every Sunday, others say she avoids it entirely. But one thing's certain. She never forgave him. In prison, Jacob was kept in protective custody more for his own mental well-being than for fear of violence. Other inmates called him the Professor Killer. Some respected him, some mocked him. Most left him alone. He kept to himself, refused television, refused therapy. His only regular activity was writing letters to Sierra. She never replied. Still, every month one would arrive handwritten, folded carefully, scentless. In those letters, he apologized over and over, not just for the murder, but for every sign he missed, every laugh he had with Ronnie. That now felt like a lie. Every dinner they shared as a family while secrets festered beneath the table. He also wrote about dreams. In one he stood in their old living room, Ronnie sitting across from him, alive again. No videos, no blood, just father and son. Ronnie would look at him and ask, "Was I really that broken?" Dad Jacob would always wake up before he could answer. The tragedy of Ronnie Jacobson didn't just belong to his family. It became a reflection of everything broken beneath the surface of respectability. It wasn't just a murder. It was about secrecy, about power, about the silence between a father and son. You never truly saw each other. and about how love, twisted by betrayal, can destroy more than a heart. It can destroy everything. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like this video for more true crime video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Take care and see you in the next video.